Why Nigeria Matters in the Struggle Around Ibrahim Traoré. Hello everyone, and welcome back. Why has northern Nigeria suddenly become the center of so many global conversations? Why now, and why with such urgency? In recent weeks, a controversial argument has been spreading across alternative media in the United States and Africa. The claim is not about charity, not about protection, and not about sudden concern. It is about strategy. According to this view, Nigeria is not the destination, it is the corridor, a gateway, a staging ground in a much larger geopolitical contest aimed at the Sahel alliance and its most defiant leaders, Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger. Tonight, we are not here to trade slogans or outrage. We are here to slow down, connect the dots, and examine why the Sahel, once ignored, is now impossible to overlook. Stay with me. That is why some analysts argue Nigeria is not the destination, but the access point. Over the last few years, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso have taken steps that quietly but decisively altered their relationship with external power. They restricted or closed foreign military facilities. They moved to reclaim authority over strategic resources. And they formalized regional coordination through the alliance of Sahel states. Each step on its own could be managed. Taken together, they represent a shift away from dependency. And dependency, once reduced, triggers resistance. At the center of this shift is Niger, not because of rhetoric, but because of what lies beneath its soil. Niger is a major supplier of uranium, a material that remains critical to global energy systems and long-term strategic planning. Control over uranium is not symbolic, it is leverage. When that leverage moves out of predictable hands, attention follows. To the west lies Mali, with extensive reserves of gold and other minerals. To the south and west again, Burkina Faso, also rich in gold. And standing at the center of Burkina Faso's new direction is Ibrahim Traoré, a leader who has come to represent a broader demand for resource sovereignty. This is where the argument becomes uncomfortable for many observers. If Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are increasingly aligned, increasingly coordinated, and increasingly unwilling to operate under old arrangements, then pressure has to be applied somewhere. Geography suggests Nigeria becomes strategically relevant, not because of its internal challenges, but because of its position. Critics of recent developments argue that attention is rarely random. It is prioritized, framed, timed. The narratives used to justify heightened interest are familiar. They emphasize protection, stability, and concern. But critics ask a basic question: why are some crises amplified while others remain background noise? Across Africa, there are long-standing emergencies that receive limited sustained attention, yet certain situations suddenly become urgent, framed as intolerable, and treated as exceptional. The inconsistency invites scrutiny, not because suffering is denied, but because focus appears selective. History offers context. Interventions rarely begin by announcing their full scope. They begin with narrow objectives, moral language, and assurances of restraint. Over time, mandates expand, infrastructure is established, and what was temporary becomes normalized. This pattern has appeared before. What makes the current moment distinct is the presence of the Sahel alliance. For decades, influence relied on fragmentation. Countries were approached individually. Pressure was applied asymmetrically. The AES disrupted that model by creating a shared front. When Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani aligned their governments, they created something harder to isolate. Regional coordination raises the cost of pressure. It complicates leverage, and it limits options that once seemed straightforward. This is why critics argue the focus has shifted toward weakening the alliance indirectly rather than confronting it directly. Another layer of this argument involves narratives. Public discourse shapes consent. Stories determine which actions feel necessary and which feel questionable. When concern is emphasized selectively, it conditions expectations. That does not mean every stated concern is false. It means timing matters. For an American audience, this deserves careful reflection. Foreign policy is rarely driven by a single factor. It is shaped by resources, alliances, and long-term positioning. Humanitarian language often exists alongside strategic calculation. The claim circulating now is not that concern for Nigeria is invented, but that it is incomplete. The Sahel leaders at the center of this discussion share a pattern. They asserted greater control over resources. They reduced reliance on external security arrangements. And they promoted regional solutions rather than bilateral dependence. These choices challenge established systems, and systems respond when challenged. This is why Ibrahim Traoré appears repeatedly in these conversations, not because he acts alone, but because he articulates a shift that others recognize. His stance reflects a growing impatience with arrangements that extract value while offering limited autonomy. Whether one agrees with every interpretation or not, the underlying tension is real. Control over resources shapes bargaining power. And when bargaining power shifts, resistance follows. Nigeria's role in this conversation is especially sensitive. Nigeria is not a minor player. It is a regional heavyweight, demographically, economically, and politically. Its territory matters. Its decisions ripple outward. Its alignment influences outcomes beyond its borders. The concern raised by critics is not about Nigeria itself, but about being drawn into a larger contest without full transparency, about becoming a corridor rather than a decision maker. History suggests that the most consequential shifts often begin quietly. They are justified as necessary, framed as temporary, and accepted before their implications are fully understood. What unites Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso today is not ideology. It is insistence. Insistence on choosing partners, on defining terms, on acting as a bloc rather than as isolated states. That insistence changed the equation. And once the equation changes, neighboring spaces become strategically relevant whether they intend to or not. This is why calls for vigilance are growing. Not panic, not reaction. Awareness. Awareness that geography creates opportunity. Awareness that narratives shape legitimacy. And awareness that once momentum builds, reversing course becomes difficult. For those watching from the United States, this moment offers a chance to look beyond headlines and ask harder questions. Questions about consistency, about timing, about why certain regions suddenly matter more than others. The Sahel was ignored for years. Its instability was treated as peripheral. Now, as its leaders coordinate and assert autonomy, it has become central. That shift alone should prompt reflection, because in geopolitics, attention follows leverage, and leverage follows resources, coordination, and resolve. Whether Nigeria becomes a stabilizing force or a contested corridor will depend on choices made under pressure. Choices shaped by information, by history, and by awareness of patterns that repeat. So the question is not whether Nigeria matters. It always has. The question is why it matters in this way, at this moment. Is this a coincidence or a pattern? The rise of the Sahel Alliance, the assertiveness of leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, and the renewed focus on regional corridors suggest a deeper recalibration is underway. Awareness does not require agreement, but it does require attention. Because in geopolitics, silence is often mistaken for consent, and confusion is often mistaken for inevitability. The future of the Sahel will not be decided by force alone, but by whether people recognize the stakes before choices are made for them. Thank you for watching.